DJ Jimmy Deal.
Hey, everybody, and welcome to the Jimmy Deal Celebrity Spotlight Show. Of course, I'm Doc G, and I have for you and Jimmy as well, we have the famous celebrity Robbie Leslie, the DJ from Studio 54 with his own Sirius channel and all the great things that he's done. Welcome, Robbie.
Hi, guys.
Welcome to the show, Robbie. How you doing?
Doing fantastic. So great to be here. Thank you very much.
Such an honor to have you on the show. So excited about tonight's show, actually. And you know, of course, you were the original DJ from Studio 54. First off, tell us about your radio show at Siriusxm on the Studio 54 channel.
Oh, gladly. It's something I'm really very proud of. It's called Robbie Leslie Presents. And the reason that is because not only do I submit my own mixes and broadcast them, but I'm also representing and honoring DJs still living and those that have passed. And so about every third week, I will put on a recording from a legendary DJ from the past, like, you know, Roy Thode, Jim Burgess, Richie Rivera, so many artists that I've collected their original recording tapes. And so we'll do some of my old tapes, some of my old recordings from back in the day. And then we'll have a legendary DJ showcase, and then we'll have a new mix that I'll put out. And we'll do that, you know, in a 3-week cycle. And it's every Friday at 9 o'clock Eastern and 6 o'clock Pacific. And it's going to be 500 broadcasts in early January. So I'm pretty amazed that I've been with the station this long, because it seems like about 6 months. It's just been so great. It's really great.
Absolutely. And you still DJ just about everywhere, as we were talking off the air a little bit. You just did a cruise. Yes,
I just did a cruise from Panama to Aruba. It was an 8-day cruise on a clipper ship. And it was a beautiful ship. We set up a really high-tech booth on the top deck. And we had parties every night. And it was absolutely fantastic. The weather was great, really great vibe. A couple disco nights. And so, it was a terrific week.
So awesome. Now, Robbie, you didn't really have any intention of being a DJ when you were growing up, right? You were a waiter for some time, and then how did you get involved in becoming a DJ?
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting story. I came from not a very musical family. We didn't have the radio on at home or anything like that. And it wasn't until I got out into the business world, in other words, working, and I happened to be a waiter, and I worked in some bars, and of course they always had jukeboxes, and I loved to listen to the music, and I became a big disco head very early on. I loved, Eddie Kendrick's First Choice, Ecstasy, Passion, and Pain, a lot of the early 70s artists that were, I call it proto-disco, because it was before it really became a mainstream thing. And so I would ask the owners of these bars or restaurants if I could stock their jukeboxes. And some of them said yes. And so I sort of started learning about music that way, a very rudimentary way. And then I got hired to work at a restaurant on Fire Island as a waiter. And this restaurant was called the Sandpiper. And it was it would turn into a disco at night. It would serve food until midnight, and then it would switch over to a discotheque. And back then, they were playing tapes by none other than Tom Moulton. So, think about that for a second. So I was listening to these amazing mixes by, Tom Moulton himself every night, from first song to last, every night, just absorbing all this amazing music. And I worked there for 5 years. On the second year, I asked them if they wouldn't mind, this was off season, if I could possibly try my hand at DJing. And they said, well, as long as you don't drive all the customers out, you can give it a shot. And of course, off season, it was pretty quiet, and we were the only game in town, so it wasn't much of a risk on their part. So when I did it, it just was like such a visceral reaction. I just loved doing it. I loved seeing what I was doing, having such an immediate response to the floor. And from then on in, I was just a committed DJ, and was, I had no other interests. I came back the following summer, and I would bartend on Friday and Sunday, and then I would DJ on the slow nights, Monday through Thursday. And so that's how I cut my teeth. And to start, a DJ job on Fire Island, which was one of the early disco kind of ground zeros, I guess you could say. Really opened a lot of doors later in my career because a lot of the right people, promotion people and industry people were hearing me there. So that was a great entree into the business. And that's when I moved into New York City. Of course, that was a real feather in my cap.
Sure. How do you break into the New York music scene and the clubs in New York City?
Right. Well, as I said, I worked at this club on Fire Island for 5 years, and they lost their lease or they refused to renew it in 1979. So, of course, the golden year of disco. And so at the end of the year, when they closed, that was Halloween, we had a big blow-up party, and I DJ'd that. So I went into the city, and I gave myself 6 months to try to break into the business and see if I could support myself. And I was very, strict about it. I said, 6 months. Okay. If you can do it, great. If not, you've got to kind of rethink your career trajectory. And I got a couple auditions. I did the Ice Palace and a couple smaller places, but I got an audition at 12 West, which is one of the big, great dance halls to this day. It's still my favorite club ever. To dance in and to work in, and they liked my work, and they hired me as a second resident. There were always 2 residents there because they're only open on the weekends, and the rest is history, as they say.
Well, now that's a private club, right? 12 West.
That was a private club, although they were very democratic. I mean, they would let people in if at the door if you came and didn't have a membership, as long as you looked cool and you were there for the music and dancing. But it wasn't a cruisy place or anything. It was a place people really, really went specifically to dance because they loved the music. So, the doormen were trained. They knew what they were looking for as far as the crowd. And down there on the West Side Highway, the only people that really would come would be people, specifically to go to 12 West. So, but it was just a great place. It was just very, I guess democratic, as I said before, is the best word for it. Everyone was equal. There was no society, or there was no A list and B list, and everyone was just celebrating this great music. And they had the most amazing DJs. It opened in 1975. Jimmy Stewart worked there, Tom Savarese, Jim Burgess, Alan Dodd. Of course, I'm going to leave some out. Pay for it later. Those were the principles that stick to mind. And I want to add, I was off on Saturday nights when I was working summers on Fire Island, and that was just a quirk because everyone went to Cherry Grove to dance on Saturdays. So the place I worked at was dead on Saturday nights, contrary to every other club in the world. So I got Saturday nights off, and I would just hightail it into Manhattan. And dance at Studio, and dance at 12 West, all the best clubs of the day. And that was also great exposure for me to listen to this pantheon of amazing DJs, and just, absorb it all. And, their styles, what I liked, what I didn't like, and also seeing how the crowd responded. It was a great learning curve for me.
Which is very important when you're DJing, is to read the crowd.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I'm one of the members of that school that I'm playing for them, not playing for me, because
there you go. I love that.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
It's, there are people that's okay, it's my way or the highway as far as their attitude in the booth. I'm not one of them. I'm there for them. And of course, reading the crowd, it's very, very subtle sometimes, very obvious other times, but that's what it's all about, is following them.
Doc G, what do you have for Robbie Leslie?
I was actually going to ask that question. Over the years, you've were at Studio 54. You've met a lot of celebrities. Who comes to mind when you think, "Oh my God, this was the celebrity I really wanted to meet"? Or did you, talk to them and get to know them?
Golly, well, I did meet Casey later on, and he was just such an early pioneer in the disco field that and he was just so nice and so approachable and chatty and talkative, and not in any way standoffish. I just really kind of bonded with him very easily. We just chatted. But I mean, golly, I've met so many people over the years.
It's hard.
Especially back in those days, mostly celebrities, movie and fashion and television and things. But there were certain ones. I remember meeting Johnny Mathis, which was kind of fun. And to meet them in person, a lot of times it's completely contrary to what you think of them. He was the most shy, quiet person. I met Michael Jackson at the Red Parrot in Manhattan, which was on 57th Street. And, I just immediately my heart went out to him because he just seemed so distracted, so tugged at in every direction possible. And just, profoundly unhappy is the vibe I got right off the top.
Really?
I felt honored to meet him, and it was a thrill, of course. But instantaneously, I observed that he wasn't 100% there. He was, like I said, distracted. He was he probably had 1,000 things going on in his head.
Right.
It's just celebrity is a double-edged sword, of course, and a lot of times in the clubs, it's one of their few places that they can kind of let their hair down a little bit. And sometimes they're unable to do that because people will not leave them alone. So it just depends on the individual and how they can cope and handle it.
Well, they're watching crowd reaction too as you're playing the music. They're watching the crowd reaction to the music and the beat and everything,
yes, too. Especially if they're in the booth with you. Yes. Right. And generally the owners or the managers would trot them up to the booth to meet me and stuff. Yeah.
I heard Halston used to hang in your booth with you sometimes.
Yes, yes, he did. You must have read that somewhere. Yeah. Halston was like my, I want to say my nemesis. He was, I mean, not really, but I think he really got a kick out of tormenting me.
Really?
Yeah, really, truly. At studio, as you probably have seen pictures, the DJ booth is pretty small, right. And it's very long. You as you head towards the turntables at the end. It's just a kind of a little narrow space. Anyways, the records are on one side. The light man is on the other side. So Halston always would plant himself between me and the record and my records. And he was a, substantial guy. He was tall and kind of broad. And I just always got the feeling that it was not an accident, because of course the records are running and there's only a finite amount of time that you need to, get another record on. And he just seemed to make it difficult for me to do that. And this happened several times. It was weird. I don't know if he felt like, wherever he was, like, this is my territory, okay, I'm in the booth and this is my space. For whatever reason, he would torment me. Yeah.
What was the process of becoming a DJ at Studio 54?
Well, just getting hired, really. Steve Rubell, that is,
right.
It was very much like a very, it was not a big deal. It was like he'd heard about me, brought me in. I didn't audition or anything. It just, they gave me a night. I played it as I would play it anywhere else. And they didn't, come at the end of the night and say, okay, you're hired or anything like that. It was very casual. It was quite amazing. And that was in 1980. So Steve had already gotten, out of jail. But he was still in the club all the time, and he had his, he had all his celebrity friends that were in there. So it was just, it was there was no. I know Studio 54 is the great, pinnacle of DJing, but it was very matter of fact. It was okay, see you next week, type of thing. And I was there quite a long time until about, I think, the end of 1985, which is a pretty long run.
Yes.
And I usually work 2 nights a week, usually Thursdays and Sundays. And occasionally they bring me in on the Fridays and Saturdays. Although generally I'd be working somewhere else. But that was my normal gig.
Wow. I have a question from a listener who wanted to know. He said, Steve Rubell, there's so many stories about Steve. What is fact and what is fiction about Steve Rubell?
Right. Well, everything you've heard is true. That answers the question. He was, I think one of the prevailing stories is that he was very, very sharp, but when he was out and about, he seemed so out of it, he was about to just pass out. and yet at the same time, on some level, some rudimentary level, he had everything in control. And I think that really kind of describes him. It's kind of amazing. He would come up to the booth, and he was just looking around. He looked very disoriented sometimes, and yet at the same time, he seemed to maintain. And he really knew he had this visceral connection with the club as far as the energy, and he really knew when it was clicking and when it wasn't clicking. But he was not a very hands-on owner. In other words, he wouldn't pester me, like didn't like a song or whatever. He would make requests every once in a while, but generally, you kind of knew what to expect from him. But he was like the host every night that he was there. He was the host. It was his party. Of course, Ian, I never saw Ian in the club, not even once, while it was open. Yeah. So Steve was my go-to guy all the time. And I remember once at the end of the night, or very close to closing, he came up and he said, would you be interested in moving to Paris? And I haven't mentioned this too many times, but I said, well, let's talk about it. And so apparently he was thinking about opening a Studio 54 in Europe, and Paris was, I guess, either one or the only, city he picked. And so he came to me to do it. And I was thrilled about that. It never happened, of course. I think Palladium came along, and that he devoted all his attention to creating that. But it was exciting. I mean, my mind raced. It was like, oh my God, I'm going to open up a Studio 54 in Paris. But of course, that never came to pass.
Amazing.
Yes, it was. It was fun.
Lisa and Flo, who good friends of mine, they actually contacted me when they were very excited that you were coming on, and they used to go to Studio 54 all the time. And they told me about the lights. The lights used to drop down to the floor. How important were the lights and the music? How important were the lights and the music to get the crowd going?
Right. Of course, the music was the most important thing.
Right.
But the light show was astounding. It really was. Because it was a theater, it had, flats or sets, rails, they call them. And so you would pull them on one side of the dance floor were the original pulleys and ropes that you would raise and lower the different sets if it were still a theater. And of course, now it's a theater again. So they didn't have to do many changes. They basically restored that theatrical aspect. But the backdrops would change frequently, and adding to that feature with the up and down of sets and flats, they added the light poles, which were they had to be at least 30 feet long or 30 feet tall. And of course, the ceiling was so high, there was plenty of room to pull them up and out of the way. I mean, they would be sky high when they weren't being used, but they would. They had two lights, red and yellow, chasing on either side, and then they had police beacons at the bottom.
Oh, wow.
And when they would lower them, of course, no one knew this, but when they would lower them, some of the tech crew had to go out onto the dance floor and the perimeter of the dance floor and make sure that people didn't, either grab them and hang on to them or be dancing and not be aware that something's coming down on you from above. So they had to just sort of keep order when they would bring them. And sometimes they'd bring them down right over your heads just to kind of tease the crowd. Sometimes they'd bring them right down to the floor. They'd be like 3 or 4 inches off the floor. It was a terrific effect because both the lights are now, instead of over you, the lights are on either side of you, and the police beacons are at your feet. So if it's a crowded floor, it was almost like having a strobe at your feet because they'd be cycling and they were white. So it was a terrific effect. And they had these neon panels that also raised and lowered that could be angled in any different way. They had, oh my God, the number of effects that they would raise and lower. But I mean, it was all about, that principle, raising and lowering sets and effects to the crowd. And just the variety of them was never dull. It was never boring. And sometimes you'd only see an effect once or twice in the course of a night.
Right.
And of course, the great granddaddy of them all, of course, was the Crescent Moon with the Coke spoon, and that was designed by Richie Williamson. He did the actual moon and spoon, and they were two separate pieces. The moon would come down, and the spoon would come from stage left, I believe, and it would approach the nose of the moon. And so when the two met, there were little lights in the nose, and they would like spark up to the brain.
Cool.
From the nose. And they were white, and then when they get to the brain, they turn red. So it was the crowd, of course, they'd scream. They were delighted with that. It was terrific because, of course, we're talking the late 70s, and cocaine was like the drug du jour, especially there. And so it was, and of course, it was socially acceptable. So people were loving it. Whether they were high or not, it was like, this is just so over the top. I mean, it was celebrating drug use in a discotheque. It was an amazing time. It was like the Roaring 20s, 50 years later.
They said it was like they were passing out candy type of thing. Is almost like that atmosphere.
Yes, absolutely. Exactly. Yes. Yeah.
Wow. So I have another question for you, Robbie. Now, speaking of 78, 79, the Saturday Night Fever and everything, did you see the influence that was coming for all the new, all the rock bands that got into disco? Because I saw disco they got the influence, they made their song, and then all of a sudden now they're a disco band until the next album or whatever. The point is they did go disco. So what was your opinion on that? You think that was a good idea for some bands, or it depends?
Well, some groups, I mean, Kiss is a great example. I mean, they were on the Casablanca label, and they did I Was Made for Loving You, and they did very well. I mean, some of the like Come Lately artists that they jumped on the bandwagon towards the end. Of course, the most notorious is Ethel Merman for her disco album, but there were many. It's just a matter of like producers and the songs they chose to record. I mean, Rod Stewart's like disco entry. Do you think I'm sexy?
Yeah. Do you think I'm sexy? Yeah.
I think I'm sexy. I think is how it's is a classic. And of course, Miss You by the Rolling Stones. There are some really great songs.
Yeah, I agree.
Terrific. They're great songs without pigeonholing them as disco songs.
Right.
And you could pull them out now and play them on pop radio, and I think they'd work. It's just a matter of quality of production, and like it has to be a great song. I mean, that's the watermark. Is is it a great song to begin with? And some of them fell flat. But my God, when I think back in those days, going to the record pool in New York, which I was in for the record, the volume of great music, and that's one of the reasons I think now that disco's getting a second look, or maybe a third look, and is really being appreciated as it is, and it's still got legs,
Amazing.
Yeah, some of my favorites from 78, 79, of course, are The Last Train to London by ELO.
Yeah.
And a couple others like Kansas, I think it was called People of the South Wind. That had a disco feel to it. Right. But yeah, you're right. A lot of that stuff, it just meshed well with that era. Absolutely. And that music still lives today.
It's true. Yeah. I mean, it's danceable, but just to pigeonhole it as just disco is doing it a disservice. Yeah.
Right. I agree. I totally agree.
Yeah.
How important was it for the record companies to get a record played at Studio 54?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, well, if you got it played there, you were done. I mean, you really had no more worries. It was, of course, getting it played mainstream. I shouldn't say everyone was watching every song that was played at studio, but and there were lots of records I could play it at the Saint or 12 West or any number of other clubs that I could never get away with at studio, because studio did, in spite of its being like just the ultimate place, it was a little on the commercial side as far as programming goes. But if it was played there, and of course the most famous case is I Will Survive, and that just, I can remember because I was working in Fort Lauderdale
Right.
at a club called the Marlin Beach Hotel. It was called the Lower Deck Disco, and Bobby Videriti was the DJ I worked with, and he apparently read in Billboard or something. It's like, oh yeah, it's not the A side, it's not Substitute by Gloria Gaynor. Flip it over and play I Will Survive. And it was an instant hit at Studio 54. This is in Billboard, and of course, any DJ worth his salt is reading these articles from Billboard, and instantly, that was like across the board, and of course the number one record, I think, pop and dance, maybe even R&B, but that was like, that's a classic example. But getting it on KTU also was another great achievement. If you could get Frankie Crocker to put your record on the New York station, I mean, you had it made.
Right.
So, Robbie, what about extended mixes? Because I know there was a lot of them. They came to fruition in that era as well. It's 7, 12 minutes, 14 minutes. I mean, I saw a lot of them. What do you think of that?
Yeah, and in New York, we played after hours. I mean, we'd start at either 10 or some clubs 11 or 12. So yeah, I mean, 8 to 12-minute records were just fine because you were going to be playing at least 6 to 8 hours, minimum. And so you had no problem with long programming. And people were like, they weren't like going to be leaving at 2 a.m. Like, okay, I've had enough. So you really could like stretch your program. And that was wonderful. And there was so much product coming out at the time. You never had to play anything twice. And that was a treat. I mean, it really was. It was just so much product to play. And it would be an effort sometimes to get it all in, frankly.
Really?
Yeah, it was the golden age, of course, and then things started changing around 1980. But in the big cities like New York and L.A. and San Francisco and Miami, nothing really much happened. I mean, there was still nightlife was just going gangbusters. Now in the smaller cities and things, that were a little more fad oriented. All those discos that popped up in the hotel lounges and places like that, they changed their format pretty quickly.
Wow. Did you bring your own records or did they supply them?
Oh yeah, I would bring, well, I mean, I would get my records from the record companies, but as far as working a gig, I'd bring my own music. There were no collections in the clubs I worked at, which was, back then, you would, I lived in a 4th floor walk-up, and so when I would come home at like 5 and 6 in the morning, I mean, having to lug those records upstairs to the 4th floor was, oh man, it was, I'm glad it was then and not now, frankly. But yes, I always brought my own music, and it was, if you were a DJ that was playing good rooms and getting good jobs, you would get like advanced copies. You'd get things that weren't in circulation. You get all the basics from the record pool, but you'd get like these test records. You'd get mixes that weren't out yet, or they would just bring them in that night. They'd do the rounds and they'd bring an acetate of a song that they literally just finished in the studio like that evening.
Wow.
And they were dashing to the clubs to see what they sounded like on a big sound system. That was exciting. I mean, I remember playing before Enough Is Enough by Donna Summer and Barbra Streisand came out. They brought me the unmixed version. In other words, the mixed version, I think, is something like 12 minutes or something. So they brought like a 9 or 10 minute version, which it was a little different. It had the same a cappella intro and the same, very, very bombastic ending and stuff. In other words, they needed to tweak it. So I had the rough mix, and I was one of the first to play it. And it was
nice.
like, oh my God,
Wow.
Donna Summer and Barbra Streisand together. Think about that. You wrap your head around that one. Yeah. And, sometimes they bring the artists themselves to the booth, and that was kind of exciting because, as a DJ, we were their biggest fans.
Right.
And it was very exciting to meet them, face to face. Golly, a lot of artists. It was very, it meant a lot to me that they would bring them in and introduce them, as a way of saying thank you for playing their music.
Right. Now you did. You worked for Steve Robel, of course, and then you later on worked for Mark Fleischman. Was it a big difference working with Mark?
No, not really. Not really. I mean, the club was such a powerhouse. The club, like, it's like wagging the tail wagging the dog. The club, just ran itself almost. So Mark basically used the same formula and pretty much was like in the background. He wasn't as much of a personality as Steve was. Steve would like come up in the booth with a microphone and like stop the music and want to, say something to the crowd or open the bar. Drinks are, on me for the hour or whatever. They're just unexpected things. And I remember when I was not DJing that night, but when he was going to prison, when he was going to jail after he was sentenced, we went to the farewell party. And I remember he had Frank Sinatra's I Did It My Way played at least twice. And it was cute the first time. It was like, the whole crowd was like, arm in arm, and everyone was hugging, and we were kind of fist pumping the sky, like good for you, like for not like being a wimp, you're like doing it your way, and so these things are totally unexpected, and in most of the big clubs, that would be considered heresy to stop the room and have like the owner come on. But studio was a one-of-a-kind place. And,
amazing
things happened.
Yeah, we have a question from Tom. He wanted to know, what's your favorite memory of working at Studio 54?
Well, I can't tell you that one. But my favorite memory, golly, good or bad, I can't tell you one interesting memory. I wouldn't say it's my favorite, but it's one that really sticks in my mind. Christina Onassis was, she came to town and she came to the club. Now, she was Aristotle Onassis's daughter, and they called her the poor little rich girl. She was like she was the richest girl in the world at the time, I believe. Mm-hmm. Anyway, she wanted to hear In the Navy or something by the Village People, and I didn't have it. That record had already kind of been shelved at that point, so I had to have a friend call my apartment and ask my roommate to grab it, off the shelf and get in a cab, bring it to the club, and and then of course I'd play it. So it was just the most like outrageous thing. Like somebody coming to the club, they want to hear a song. No, I don't have it. Well, of course, the person it is, the richest lady in the world. So yeah, you will play it. But it wasn't like a threat or anything. It was like that. It was just like, okay, let's make this happen. And so, my roommate dashed in with my 12-inch of In the Navy, and on it goes. So, I mean, that was just one of the many, like, kind of outrageous things that went on. There were, there were so many things. I mean, seeing people in the booth. I remember Sylvester Stallone once kind of like threatened me because I wouldn't play his music.
Really?
Or his request, I think it was. But he was really toasted. He was gassed. And so, we let it go. But I mean, I had to have him removed from the booth. So
really? Wow.
Yeah. But that was just a quick little thing. But it was just ready for anything there, truly.
Wow. I mean, how important was like disco? I mean, what made disco the legend that it has become and stood the test of time?
I think the quality of it, frankly. It's you see, disco followed the 60s when you had these incredible artists, and I mean, just like going to the top of the list, like Carole King and James Taylor and Joni Mitchell and this assembly of gifted artists, as composers, writers, arrangers. So as the 70s dawned, you had this well of talent, and the music was changing, but the musicianship that was in the business, in the industry, and that goes from the singers and writers all the way down to the session players, was just so like supreme, so good, so professional that the songs that were coming out, yes, they were disco, they were very heavy on the drums and percussion, but the quality of writing, the quality of arrangement, all the way from early disco, which was, like the Philly sound and all that stuff, to the very refined disco and Euro disco. It was just such a spectacular burst of energy and burst of quality that it really, really had staying power. And so now, of course, it was poo-pooed as passe, immediately after the Disco Sucks, thing happened. And but then people started looking at it more, I guess, more clinically, or more objectively, and seeing the quality. And you can pull these records out now, and I mean, they're really great songs. You listen, you isolate like a string section or a horn solo or a saxophone solo, and you realize, oh my God, this stuff is classic. This stuff is timeless. And so, now it's getting, I think it's due respect that it really missed early on in this country.
Right. When you hear this music today, I mean, it brings you right back to that time. It's a true time machine, really, to listen to these records again.
Music's always been that. Yeah. I mean, you can do that, in my parents' generation, when they would hear big band and swing music, I mean, it was the same principle. But music is the ultimate time machine. It really can take you back to a place, a time, or friends, absent friends. It can connect you with people that you used to dance to, or that you used to, be in love with. You used to have your song, for example. I would hear things and it would take me instantly to somebody special in my life. Yeah, that's the great thing about music. One of my often used quotes is never underestimate the power of music, and it's a cliche, but it's true. I mean, it truly is such a powerful medium.
Doc G, go ahead.
I had to agree with you there, but also I had a lot of arguments when I was a DJ, because they kept saying that this is not a disco song or it is a disco song. Mm-hmm. So did you ever have that problem trying to, like Barry White, some of his stuff was kind of disco-y, but not everything was.
Right.
Love's Theme was kind of disco-y. But did you ever have that problem where people would argue with you? They literally come up and say, well, that's not disco. I said, well, it is disco.
No, that happened much later. That happened actually after, when I started playing some of the smaller clubs, when people had access to you and they decided to share their opinions with you, and generally under the influence of something. But back then, I have to tell you, and I'm very fortunate in this regard. I was playing like the best clubs in the world, and so the crowd likewise were the best crowds, and they were very respectful. They were never had anyone try to lock horns with me or try to lecture me on what is disco and what isn't disco. I mean, if they didn't like my set, they might like give me their thumbs down or something. But these places, either the DJ booth was very isolated from the crowd, or the crowd was just so well trained or so respectful of the DJ talent that they never really intervened. So lucky me. Now I have lots of friends that worked in smaller clubs, like outside the city and stuff. And, I would hear these nightmares. I can remember a buddy of mine in New Jersey, Alex, was telling me that the club manager or owner would come up and he'd have a full dance floor and he'd say, I want you to clear the floor because I want to sell more drinks. And I'd be like horrified. I mean, it's so outrageous, but of course it comes from a different perspective. In New York City, that's like, that's a stake through the heart.
Of course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know you worked with so many other different DJs. Was there always a friendly rivalry between you both, all the DJs that work together?
I guess you could say a friendly rivalry, is a good way of putting it. A respectful, professional rivalry. And I did find in some cities that the rivalry was a little less polite. When I would guest in different cities, because I started doing that in the very early 80s when I'd start doing like these special events here or there. And, I would notice that things weren't quite as polite or quite as professional in certain places. But in general, yes, the pros are they're pros for a reason, And
Exactly.
when there's only a finite number of gigs out there, and you do your best, and if you're talented, and you let it be known that you'd like to work at a particular place, you just either get it or you don't, and you don't try to sabotage another DJ or sucker punch them in some way, professionally. That's just not the way I do business. And I've been very lucky. And again, it all goes back to starting to work at the Sandpiper. Like my little job on weeknights at Fire Island was like the perfect way to get started, because the right people were seeing me. And then when I relocated to Manhattan, I was familiar to them. There was a good buzz about me. And consequently, I started in very big clubs. And so I just get one after another, like, on my resume, it's like staggering how many amazing clubs I either played at or opened or closed, so it's been a truly blessed, career. I'm very, very
Wow.
fortunate.
Do you remember when Studio 54, when it reopened, it was a juice bar for a while after they lost their liquor license? What was that like?
That's correct. That was totally fine because most people were high on drugs anyway. So it didn't change a thing. People were buying sodas or waters or whatever. So yeah, it didn't. It barely knew the difference. Truly, I'm serious. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Amazing. So you told me you were doing a disco cruise coming up. Tell us about that.
Oh yeah, I'm really excited about this. This is going to be so cool. And I've been around the block a few times, and I've done this for a long time, but I'm absolutely over the moon about this because this is a dedicated disco cruise. It's starting February 26th, and it's called the Ultimate Disco Cruise. And if you want to Google it, it's ultimatediscocruise.com. So there's my plug. But they're going to have 40 disco acts, original artists on board to perform in the course of the cruise. And I'm going to be the DJ in the club, But I mean, Denny Terrio's going to be there. I mean, it's
nice.
so over the top.
Denny, yeah.
Yes. But I mean, First Choice, Kool and the Gang, KC and the Sunshine Band, Taste of Honey. I mean, oh golly, Stylistics. Think about 40 disco acts. I mean, there's hardly any that won't be there, frankly. And these are original artists or official replacements. And they're actually there's a Donna Summer tribute artist that apparently looks and sings very, very spot on Donna Summer. So
Really?
they're covering all bases. And it starts out of Miami, and I just cannot wait. It's going to be fantastic.
Wow. Would you say Studio 54 was the most important club you worked for?
Well, it was the most important in that it opened doors for me everywhere, and it continues to do so. I wouldn't be still probably in such demand. I mean, I'm going to London in 2 days to do a Studio 54 party. I was just in Los Angeles last week doing another disco thing. So, having that on my resume has truly, it's been like the golden key to so much work. And of course, now that I work with Siriusxm and have for quite a long time now, that's great exposure as well. So I mean, it's been just greatly fortunate, very, very lucky I am.
Right. So awesome. Doc G, go ahead.
Yeah, I wanted to ask you, do you think that Donna Summer is the diva that everybody keeps talking about as far as Studio 54 gal, and also a tremendous disco diva? That's pretty much what I heard.
When you say diva, do you mean that in a negative way? Like,
No, in a good way.
Okay. Yeah, I absolutely.
I mean, everybody recognizes her. She's recognizable by her voice, recognizable by her style and everything that goes with disco.
Truly, yes, I truly do. I mean, and her staying power. I mean, from her first album, From Love to Love You Baby, which was so groundbreaking. I mean, it broke so many rules right from the get-go. I mean, I can remember in the early 70s when, even like a suggestive lyric would be like so shocking. I remember Dirty Old Man, You Can't Keep Your Hands to Yourself. And I thought, oh my God, this is so almost profane to have this pressed on a record. And, I'm originally a little New England boy, but I mean, in the 70s, like so many rules were broken and so many fences were torn down. It's remarkable. So Donna, yeah, from her first album, and then not only, being, innovative and working with Giorgio Moroder, who was just so gifted, but her staying power. And I mean, the quality of her releases, one after another after another. There were no like dogs. There were no embarrassing releases. There was no like cheese that came out. It was just, one after another. So the staying power, I mean, she truly was the queen of disco. And, she deserves all the praise and all the love that she got. I when she passed, it was, it was like losing a family member, truly.
Wow.
Yeah.
I never got to meet her, though. I will say that. She's one of the few I never got to meet, and I'm sorry for that. Yeah, wow. I did see her live. I saw her in concert, but never got to meet her.
Wow, very nice lady. I met her once, very briefly at the Hard Rock Cafe in New York, and she, in fact, she did the line that we just played in the intro of the show. Mm-hmm. But is there a big difference, Robbie, from DJing at a club like Studio 54 and now DJing on the air at Studio 54 channel on Siriusxm?
Well, yes, because you don't have a dance floor.
Right.
So there's a lot more latitude playing on airwaves, which is a DJ's dream. I mean, I can play anything I want, and I do. I love having access to my full collection, my full library, and playing songs that if there was a dance floor, I would be a little hesitant because maybe this song is weak and is not going to keep the floor, it's not sustain the dance floor. But, when you're listening in your car or on your apps or at home, it's a whole different listening experience. And I want people, I don't want to be playing, top 20 in rotation all the time because I find it, terribly boring. But I mean, some of these these forgotten classics, and man, there are so many. Again, this is a throwback to as what I was saying before, like how incredibly talented all these artists and musicians were. I mean, I listened to some of my old tapes from the 70s, and I can't even remember some of these songs. And even Shazam or
same here.
No idea. And I have to, like some of them, it becomes like a quest for me. And I'll send it out to about 10 of my trusted DJ friends. And sometimes maybe one will say, I'll stump most of them because I'm pretty good at name that tune. But, it's a treat to sneak in some of these really kind of esoteric, forgotten songs. And because I know that's going to get a rise out of the audience. They'll either not know it and like it, or they'll think, oh my God, I haven't heard this in 100 years. And that's fun. So I do love doing the radio shows because it does give me a ton of flexibility that you don't get, of course, when you're doing a live set.
Right. I know you left music for a while and you were pursuing something else, but then you came back to it. So tell us about that.
Well, the best way to describe that is when you're at the top of your game, you have to ask yourself, privately, in when you're all alone in the cold dawn of light or morning or whatever, where do I go now? Where do I go from here? And without bragging or sounding full of myself, I was playing like the best clubs in New York City. I was being hired and flown around to play, these parties all over. And this was like in the middle of the 80s. And I had seen a couple of my DJ associates, like the late Bobby DJ, who was, one of the great early pioneers in the business. And, I would see him at the Anvil. I'm thinking to myself, this could be me in a couple of years. I love the Anvil. It was a great after-hours place. It's famous, or maybe infamous, but I mean, it's one of those places that you just had to experience, and it's part of New York's glorious, past. It's an amazing place. But I just didn't want to eventually take lesser gigs, less prestigious gigs. Sure. It just, I would have rather have left at the top of my game, and that's really what I concluded. I came to that conclusion, and so I decided to leave the business and find something else that would satisfy me. And so I had actually three major closing parties, one at the Saint, one at Studio, and one at the Palladium, like farewell parties. And I relocated to Florida from New York. And I was going to get into the art cinema business. That was kind of like what I zeroed in on. And I kept getting offers to work. And nothing was gelling in my new career. My partner and I were trying to like set something up in South Beach, and the seed money was so high that we couldn't just jump into anything. So I kept getting these offers. So just to pay the bills and sustain myself, I would take these jobs, and I had a rider in my contract that said by special arrangement. So in other words, it was not an ongoing thing. I wanted to make it absolutely clear that this was like just a one-off. It was just a one special event. But I mean, they just kept coming, and I got an offer to do San Francisco every weekend.
Oh, nice.
And they would fly me out from South Florida every Friday, and I'd work Saturday and come back on Monday morning. And by then I realized there's really nothing out there that fed me and gave me the stimulation and allowed me to express myself like being in the DJ booth. So
sure.
So I'm glad it happened, because it really made it crystal clear to me that this is the career I was meant to do. This is the great love of my life, and no regrets whatsoever.
Absolutely.
So I came back to it, and I've been doing it ever since.
Yep.
Yeah. So,
well, you're the best of the best. You're a legend in your time. Any advice for any up and coming DJs?
Don't be discouraged is the first thing. And just keep plugging away. It's a compromise. Be yourself. In other words, you have to have a style that is recognizable, but at the same time, it's a compromise with your audience. If, as we were talking about earlier, if you don't know how to read the crowd and cater to them, whatever kind of crowd that may be, then you're not going to fully click, or you're not going to make friends in management and ownership.
Sure.
Make a name for yourself as an individual, but at the same time, don't be a disco snob or a DJ snob when it's like, I know better than you do, the dance floor, and so this is it. Now, granted, there are these like mega DJs now that are making $1 million a gig, and don't think about them. Think about like career DJs that work parties for a couple hundred or a couple thousand people, and that would be your target, because those are those crazy jobs where you're being flown into St. Martin to do a yacht and get $1 million, and it's true, they do get it, because I was there. For like a 2-hour set, when a lot of times they're not even playing live. But that is not like the DJ thing that I'm talking about. This is like making the selections, playing the music, building the crowd, like taking them places. You know what I'm saying?
Right, of course.
That's the beauty of what I do, and what every DJ does when they're happy, when they're connecting to their crowd. It's I don't have to tell you, it's a beautiful, magical thing.
Of course. Doc, any parting shots for Robbie Leslie?
Oh yeah, Robbie, could you do a sweeper for us, for Jimmy and I, for the station, and actually for Jimmy's show?
Did we already go through an hour?
Yeah,
We're
almost there.
That just literally flew by, and I am amazed, and I'm so glad. That means we really clicked. So,
I want to get into some other things too, but I just want you to do this if you could. Just say who you are and your DJ and stuff, and you're listening to the Jimmy Diele Show.
Diele, pronounced Deal.
Yeah,
Jimmy Diele.
Such a deal.
Such a deal.
Yeah, and you're just going to say on Hamilton Radio, and then I'll just edit or whatever.
Okay. Hi, this is DJ Robbie Leslie. Wait. Let me do that again. Hi, this is DJ producer Robbie Leslie, and you're listening to. Oh, is it DJ or Jimmy Diele?
You could do either one you want. Jimmy Diele is fine,
great.
or DJ Jimmy Diele is fine, whatever.
Hi, this is DJ producer Robbie Leslie of Studio 54 Radio, and you're listening to Jimmy Deal right here on Hamilton Radio.
Perfect. I want to ask you too before you go about the Mixcloud and the SoundCloud that people can listen to some of your mixes on there. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Oh yeah, sure, happy to. I have a profile on Mixcloud, and I don't know exactly how many files are available to stream, but it's up in the 50s, I believe, and it runs the gamut from like chill to retro disco to modern dance music. So it's all over the map. And there are some classic recordings of me from some of the bigger clubs that are out on SoundCloud, but my profile's on Mixcloud. So by all means, I think it's DJ Robbie Leslie is the profile name.
Yeah, I'm looking at some of the stuff. It's amazing.
Oh, thanks. The nice thing about that is it's kind of an encapsulation of all kinds of music styles all together.
Well, I wanted your permission because I wanted to, because I always like that. Jimmy knows I always like to add things to our station to make it fresh and also bring people back. So I wanted your permission to maybe download some of them things and then pop them on the,
The thing about Mixcloud is you can't download them, but if there's something you like, then email me or text me, and I will send them to you. How's that?
That's good. If you can do that, that'd be great.
Stream,
yeah.
Right?
Thank you very much.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah, my pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah.
Robbie, thank you so much. It's been an honor having you on. And what a legend, man. I'm so grateful you came on the show.
I'm touched, and you guys are great, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you. It was great having you.
Thank you.
Thank
All
you.
right, guys. Have a great night, and happy holidays.
Happy holidays, Robbie. Have a great one.
Robbie. Thank you.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Take care, Robbie.
Wow, another great show, Jimmy. Yeah, what a great guy too. You got to give me his. I got his email, right? That's the email.
I'll send it to you. I have his email. Yeah, actually, you do have it. Actually, you do have it.
Okay.
But anyway, what a legend, man, and it was such an honor to have him on. I mean, he's a legend in his time. What a great disc jockey, and the amazing Robbie Leslie. Thank you, Robbie. Anyway, coming up on Wednesday night, we have Joey D of Joey D and the Starlighters. We're going to celebrate the Peppermint Twist. He's got a book signing coming up. So we're going to talk about his brand new book. That's going to be Wednesday night at 7 p.m. right here Eastern time on Hamilton Radio. And also coming up on Monday, it's American Idol's country artist, Lauren Massetti is going to be here. So it's going to be look forward to having her on the show. And also our Christmas Celebrity Spotlight with Giada Valenti is going to be here. That's going to be fun. Tia Goins, country star, she'll be on the show with us. Elvis's birthday broadcast with Elvis Presley's cousin Joey Smith and Billy the Spa Guy. They just opened a karate place up in Memphis, and we'll talk about that. They have a museum and a whole type of they'll give us a little tour of the museum. So that's going to be fun. Comedian Mike Dupree is going to be here. The radio chick Leslie Gore. Jack Jones will stop by. So many people. Just stick with us, and Doc and myself will let you know what's going on.
Yeah, we love working with people and helping people and doing things. I just want to say real quick that we are now acquiring, or we have acquired, a radio station called Oz OZ Country Music Radio, and it's for an Australian listening audience, but it's worldwide as well. You can go to ozcountrymusicradio.com and you just click on the link, listen live, and listen to my good friend Mark Eckel there. So there you go.
Great. So awesome, Doc.
We're doing so great. We're doing wonderful.
We are. I want to thank everybody for listening. Tom, thank you so much for the wonderful questions. And Cindy, Lake Ronkonkoma, Flo, and Lisa, thank you for the questions as well. So many people out there. My mom, so many people listen every week, and I really do appreciate that. Thank you so much. And don't forget to join us this Wednesday, special broadcast. Joey D of Joey D and the Starlighters. We're going to celebrate the Peppermint Twist. So that should be fun.
Awesome. It would be very awesome. All right. Bye, everybody.
Everybody have a great night. Take care. Thanks for listening.
Have a good one. Okay.